The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michela Barnett-Ellis.
Good morning, Madam President. Madam President, I want to open up my debate this morning by expressing condolences to the family of MCM Leroy Ware from Exuma. Madam President, the MCMs to the F&M family are extremely important because they are the shoulders, they are the men and women in which our party they've dedicated their lives to the party. And when we lose one, it's always a blow. And so I want to express my condolences to his family. I also want to say to you, Madam President, and to the wider Bahamian public, that COVID is still out and about. And its risk to persons with comorbidities remains the same. And so we must not drop our guard and get too relaxed. If you are sick, stay home, treat the symptoms, and come back out to play when the symptoms have dissipated. My contribution this morning, Madam President, is going to be short, and initially I had short and sweet, but it's not really sweet, but it's going to be short. This compendium, Madam President, is a step forward, but it is far from perfect. To me, it seems to be a squat in between being a controlled substance and total legalization. And we, Madam President, must decide whether we're going to control it with the same vigor as our Bookie and Barabi tax enforcement task force with assault weapons, or whether we are going to dispense it with very loose oversight. But if we are going to control it, then it really should only be dispensed by pharmacists. And pharmacists should also sell wholesale to suppliers such as the Rastafarian congregation. Madam President, details are the things that make legislation work. Too often in regulations that aren't, the details are in the things that make legislation work, and those are the regulations. But unfortunately, regulations aren't subject to the same scrutiny as acts because they don't come before these houses. And so when I look at the bills before us, Madam President, several questions come to mind. Who can the cultivators sell to? Do pharmacists purchase from manufacturers, or do they purchase from the cultivators? And who is the Rastafarian community supposed to purchase from? Do they purchase directly from cultivators or from manufacturers? If this legislation is implemented without the proper resources and with too much government bureaucracy, or maybe not enough government bureaucracy, it could be a problem. We must give it the proper resources and policies because this has the potential to be of benefit to the health and wealth of the Bahamas. And I smiled, Madam President, when the AG talked about the labs to test cannabis, because we're still looking for the labs to test DNA and forensic evidence. Madam President, rolling out legislation properly is where governments often fall short. It is at this point that things get mucked up. And so I call upon this government to depart from its usual pattern of behavior and intimately involve stakeholders in the rollout, those persons with their feet on the ground, and not simply to rely on technocrats who may have long since left practice. Let's make sure the records of those persons in possession of small quantities are expunged immediately. If there's anyone in prison or on remand for those offenses, may they be processed and released. There cannot be a delay enactment like we have a delay in the Mental Health Act, which has still not been brought into force. This is an opportunity to be innovative and to truly make opportunities available to Bahamians. But I hope that this administration does not get too overly excited by the potential economic benefit and slap hefty fees for the licenses available in this bill. Hefty license fees, which only persons with significant capital can afford, can smother the prospective growth of this industry. Madam President, in my opinion, the government has failed in so many areas. They have not reintroduced the RISE program. They didn't pass anti-corruption legislation in the first 100 days. We don't feel safer. The economics of life still have us in a chokehold. They aren't transparent, and they've refused to be held accountable. They're spending too much of our money on glitz and glamour. I ask that this government give Bahamians a glimmer of hope that this can be an industry that has not already been reserved for the usual friends and family of this administration. And with that, Madam President, I take my seat.